Well, hello, folks. Thank you for standing by and listening to the radio. And now, of course, the simulcast live through Facebook, YouTube, and X. Afterwards, it'll go on to Spotify, iHeart, Apple, and Amazon. So 2 weeks ago, Zoe managed to introduce us to Roger Green, and we talked about Chinese Ayurvedic medicine. Absolutely amazing. I ended up going to a naturopath, homeopathic, bloody big warehouse on the Sunshine Coast. I got all the ingredients. Awesome. So without further ado, we're going to have something completely different today. So let's go and get this off, and you can start the show there, Zoe.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, tonight we've got Roger Green, and that was an absolutely fantastic talk that we had with Roger last time in a couple of weeks ago. That was the first show that I did, and wow, what a superstar we had. And it was fabulous hearing about the Ayurveda and the Chinese medicine and longevity, and I've shared that because this goes to other platforms. I've shared it with lots of people, and I'm definitely going to do that course. Sounds amazing. But tonight, Roger's one of those really clever people, and he knows a lot about energy. And we're going to hear all about his different areas of energy, plus fractal water, Thunderstorm Generator, and the history of Theraphi, as well as maybe he'll tell us about some of the projects that he did with the fractal water. But anyway, over to you, Roger. We're really excited to have you again tonight, and really looking forward to hearing what you got to say.
Well, thanks, Zoe. Thanks, Jeffrey. Good to be back. Glad you enjoyed the last show. And, you know, we're all going to live to over 120 based on that information, if you take it seriously. So what happened, you know, like my background is in Chinese medicine. And, you know, one of the themes of Daoist philosophy is that you sort of become a guardian of nature. You know, we're all sort of, everybody's interested in, you know, having cleaner air and, you know, keeping our ancient forests intact and looking after the ocean and getting our act together here on good old planet Earth. And so what happened to me was I did study the 8 rays of Chinese medicine. That's acupuncture, you know, martial arts, the herbs, massage, of course, food as medicine. And then one of these rays, they're called 8 rays. It's a holistic approach. You've got yin and yang and the Tao, and, you know, we even talked about the 5 elements a couple of weeks ago. And then that gets applied to these tangible modalities. And one of them, of course, is feng shui, which is the environmental art of Taoism. Again, you know, evolved over many thousands of years. And I had a school in Sydney in the early days, you know, in the 80s. And I was pretty much the first in the West to actually have the school where we, for a good 4 to 5 years, we were able to teach all of those 8 rays, right? Now, we weren't qualifying people on acupuncture because that's like a 4 or 5 year course, but integrated into the shiatsu massage training, we did 10 weekends of acupuncture because, you know, it was, you know, you could use it in the sense of you didn't get qualified in it, so you couldn't get insurance or anything like that. And then, as you know, we had the cooking school, and so I wanted to get the whole 8 modalities together. So I started to write a feng shui curriculum. And remember, this is in the 1980s, and there was nothing. There was one book on feng shui, but through my Daoist studies and through acupuncture studies, I came across, you know, these mandalas, and then I took a 6-week course on deciphering Chinese language, and the dictionary and how to use the dictionary. And cutting a long story short, I wrote a feng shui curriculum. And so now we had all of those, our students could study all of the 8 rays of Daoist philosophy, the massage, the food as medicine, the herb. Remember the herbs we integrated into the food as medicine. We had the martial arts integrated into the shiatsu program, things like Doin and Qigong, of course. And anyway, so feng shui is the environmental art, and I wrote the first classical feng shui curriculum in the West. Then there was other schools of feng shui became popular, a little bit more new agey schools in the 1990s. It became very popular. It was a big movement. I call it the last kid on the block, in the sense that we've had these gifts from the Asian cultures, particularly from China, coming into our Western culture for the last 120 years. The Jesuits brought acupuncture, the English and the French brought it 100 years ago. And then, we had things like the I Ching coming, and then with the hippie generation, the 60s, there was a big flowering of this awareness, and you had things like Zen, and later on in the 80s and 90s, you had the martial arts coming in, and by now we've got the acupuncture schools established quite well in the West. And then the final thing to arrive was the cosmology and feng shui, which is the environmental art. So I started to teach that internationally. It took me to a lot of countries. I set up curriculums all over the world. And then, so here I am with the environmental art, and I take it as a big picture. It's not just how to design a house that feels good and harmonious and using, natural materials. This was the birth of, the eco-design movement. It was very exciting. We were now combining the eco-design with feng shui, with esoteric things. And so that was the 80s and the 90s. And that took me in. And what I was going to say is, of course, it's this theme of the guardianship of nature. The original feng shui practitioners they would design the temples and the villages and the houses, but they also protected the waterways and the forests and so forth, right? And so then it was a full circle for me, because that's what brought me to sacred geometry, which is like the Western perspective of design. Classical architecture has sacred geometry, all those ancient sites, and Egypt and Sumerian times, and right up to classical architecture was all based on sacred geometry, which is the divine proportions of nature, like the square root of 5 and 3. These wonderful ratios that you find in nature, particularly the golden mean ratio, which I'm going to talk to you about. And so now I'm putting on conferences called Feng Shui, Eco Design and Sacred Geometry. And we did several of them internationally, combining the East and the West, in quite a dynamic way. Now, so the sacred geometry, it can be applied to architecture and art and so forth. But then a lot of the other students were saying, well, what else can you use, the golden mean ratio and all of this? And I said, well, there's a lot of amazing uses for this, but they didn't actually really exist 25 years ago when we started this. So one of the first things out of that philosophy, understanding how nature works, replicating nature, was what we call the fractalwater.com, or the imploder. Now, so through sacred geometry, I learned about the golden mean ratio. Now, your listeners might have heard about it. It's the ratio of 0.618. It's the ratio that, first of all, you see it a lot in nature. You see it in the human body when you start to measure this to this to this. It's the only ratio that you when you cut a line that it's not exactly half, it's 0.618. And then this small ratio to this other ratio is the same as that one to this one, to this one, to this one. And it goes on and on and on to the infinite, where it will never repeat and it never has any friction to it. So nature, the way you get waveforms or vibrational forms to merge, right, and to, if you like, in layman's terms, to intermingle and to mix and create a vortex, is the golden mean ratio. Any other ratio doesn't do it as fine-tuned as the golden mean ratio, and there's no friction in there. So then when you look at, sunflowers and, the way plants grow and the way they stretch out to find the sun, it's all done with pretty much a ratio, and a lot of that is the golden mean ratio. It's not the only one that nature uses. So when you start to investigate this, you start to realize that there's only two forces in the universe, right? Now, of course, we call that yin and yang, right? But scientifically, you might remember in your early physics class, they would talk about centrifugal and centripetal. And so, everything is expanding and contracting. So, the centrifugal force is the expanding force, right? From, if you imagine, say, something here at the center and you want to break it up into its particles, you would use a centrifugal force to do that. So it disperses that. It's the basis of entropy, things breaking down and decaying, which science was absolutely obsessed with, and they forgot about the other force, which is the centripetal force, which from the periphery brings energy back to the core, back to the center, right? So it's the force that is the opposite to entropy, and it's the force that brings coherence and unification again, particularly to the core. So when you want to bring things together, you use a centripetal force. Now, when you have these forces of heaven and earth, so remember, our planet is spinning, right? And it's sending out millions of frequencies, right? That nature uses, and our human body, it's like an antenna, and we pick up on those frequencies. And from Mother Earth, they are the yin meridians on the body, feeding the yin organs. And then we've got the cosmic chi, which, sometimes we call heaven's chi. It's not a religious term. It's just all the amazing vibrational energy of our solar system embedded in our galaxy, which is embedded in billions of galaxies. That's a phenomenal force that's entering in to our planet, right? So that's the centripetal force, and Earth is sending out back its centrifugal force. So nature uses the golden mean ratio to capture the prana, to capture the chi. And then it's the ratio that's used to start to materialize things, like our bone ratios. Our DNA is made up of golden mean ratio. Nature uses it all the time. So then when we come to water, if you want to bring a charge to water, you're going to have to use a centripetal force, right? And one way of doing that is like with a fluid vortex spiral that's done in a golden mean ratio spiral, right? And also with magnets. Now, when you put magnets like a north end to a north end, you're imploding that water down to the 0 point. So then our listeners tonight have to kind of imagine what a torus looks like. So remember if you can imagine just what that little magnetic field looks like again from your physics class. You've got the energy coming from the outside to the inside, right? and like the polarity of north and south, that's creating a little magnetic polarity there, and we call that torus, and that is what is now produced with a central petal force that brings everything into the still point that we call the zero energy, which is related to what we call the ether, or the vibrational unity of the infinite universe, which of course the ancient alchemists would talk about a lot. And of course, that's what a lot of, when people start to talk about free energy devices, they're talking about capturing the energy from the ether, right? Now, so getting back to the water, we put fractalwater.com onto the market first about 20 years ago, because we wanted to recharge the water. When you recharge the water, the plant is able to then, oh, that's a great little images there, Jeff. That's lovely. See, they're the torus, right? Just to get you started, right? Now, when you start to do that with water, the nutrients in the soil, it can be captured a lot easier, because now the water is like, if you know, it's charged, its vibrational charge is stronger. It will pick up the electrons and the protons from the soil, and the plant responds to that. It's called the redox factor, that can absorb it. It's just like, you know, when you recharge water, and a lot of people have heard about that now, it means that you can hydrate yourself a lot better, right? The water is absorbed, right? Unlike dizzy water that comes out of the tap, you know, the electromagnetic energy is very dizzy, and it doesn't hydrate very well, right? But so when you recharge it, it hydrates. So that fractal water has got 9 magnets that are back to back, that are, as the water flows through it, plus a golden mean ratio fluid on one end. So water comes in one end and out the other end, you're getting a very highly charged water, which then goes into your hydroponics, goes into agriculture, plant growth is much better. It's a solid, robust design. Some people use it for their showers. You know, it doesn't filter the water, right? It's not a water filter. That would have to be done separately, right? But it's recharging. But the main thing here is to demonstrate that the golden mean ratio can now be used in a very tangible, practical way. So that was the first thing that we sort of dabbled in, and that's been very successful on the market. Fractalwater.com. You can check out the results that we've got and testimonials, and check out some of the science. And then we went on to think about, well, how can you get that charge? Yes, you can drink that water, but how can you replicate like the charge that you feel in nature, like in a forest or on top of a mountain, right? And that's when a Canadian inventor that I've been associated with for 25 years, Paul Harris, he started to think about how can we bring that charge deep into the body. And he created what's called the Theraphi device, theraphi.tech. And he brilliantly thought this through. He's got 2 plasma tubes, and one is spinning clockwise and one is spinning counterclockwise. So if you can imagine that plasmic vortex coming together, and guess what it's interlocked with? The golden mean ratio, which is embedded into that plasma vortex. And so as you can see in the slide here, this person is on a massage table. On either end is these plasma tubes, clockwise, anti-clockwise, and then that spins down to the 0 point. Because remember, what you're doing with the golden mean ratio is you can add and multiply right down to the 0 point, right? And then once you do that, you start to generate what's called scalar longitudinal pump waves. Now, scalar is a term that's thrown around everywhere now, but scalar just kind of means that it's a field, an equal field, just like in nature. It's a scalar field. So, but the longitudinal pump waves are very, very interesting. So most of us are only aware from high school physics class of the electromagnetic wave. Yeah, Zoe, remember, they would say, oh, here's a sine wave. It's going up and down, and this is the way we're pumping our electricity to you. It's our remember, you'd learn about electromagnetic fields, magnetic and electrical, 90 degrees. And that's, generally they would say, oh, that's okay. That's the vibrational universe that we live in, and that's it. Well, they forgot to mention, like Nikola Tesla rediscovered what's called radiant energy or longitudinal pumped waves. So when you take that vortex of energy down to the 0 point, it pumps out what's called longitudinal pumped waves, which are like sound pressure waves, but they're still going the speed of light. Right now, what's important about this is your body, all of the nutrients and the communication in your body is done with longitudinal waveforms, not electromagnetic, but longitudinal pumped waves. And this is what connects us with Mother Earth and the cosmic chi. It's longitudinal pump waves, which is what nature uses. So the Theraphi device is generating that, and you need a bit of oomph to do it. There's a bit of voltage involved, to drive that down with centripetal energy down to that 0 point, and then it pumps out the longitudinal waves. And so that's, generally used for healing. And, we did do some clinical work that it does increase the conductivity of the body with water by 44%, independently, validated with ATP increase and all sorts of things. Info at theraphi.tech if anybody wants some kind of clinical results. But the website, of course, has got lots of testimonials. They were using electromagnetic energy for pain relief in the hospitals right up to the mid 80s. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies came along and said, oh, you guys can stop using that now. We'll just pump everybody with drugs. But they were used historically for the last 100 years. Even on this website, I wrote the history of using electricity, or if you like, electromagnetic energy for healing. There's a good history from Nikola Tesla onwards, And but again, it's a breakthrough technology. It's based on nature. It's based on golden mean ratio, sacred geometry, natural harmonics. And then, so now I'm putting on these, now I started to call it breakthrough technologies. So I started off with feng shui, sacred geometry, and eco design, those conferences. And then because these technologies were starting to develop pretty well, and I got involved with a lot of other inventors. I'm not the technical person or the inventor. I'm more of the business side and the promotional side, and helping people get their finance together and keeping a team together. That was my role. So now, I'm starting to meet a lot of inventors, and they're sort of wanting to have some exposure. So I started to put on these breakthrough technologies conferences, and we did several of them. A number of them sort of morphed into what we called the Alchemy of Prague, which was about ancient alchemy and how we can use that for future alchemy, which leads us to things like cold fusion and things like the Thunderstorm Generator. So for those who don't know much about cold fusion, COLD, cold fusion, or it's also known as low energy nuclear reactions. In a way, nature does this. It transmutes elements, and it does it. You don't have to put like a lot of energy into doing that. Nature uses heaven and earth for all of its energy needs. So, but those elements are transmuting, and through the reductionist science, we haven't been able to achieve. They don't even believe that it happens. Can you believe that? They just throw it off and that's old-fashioned alchemy. That doesn't happen. But that's not so the case in what we call cold fusion. And some of your listeners might remember back in 1989, there was on Time magazine, there was Fleischmann's and Pons, and they said, and there was a bit of a oil crisis going on at that time. And they sort of said, look, we've created cold fusion, it works, but it was a little bit premature. And there was a big backlash, and a lot of people weren't able to repeat the experiment. And then it got terrible in the sense that academically, they really suppressed it. Even if you use the term cold fusion, you'd lose your job. Those guys, Fleischmann and Pons, lost their jobs, and they didn't even want to. The story goes that they said, no, we don't want to present it yet. We want to do more work. But the University of Utah University put pressure on them, thinking that it was working and they'll get all the praise for it and get funding. But it wasn't the case. And anyway, it got a really bad rap, and it had to go underground. And there's been no government funding or anything like that until about 2012, when there was an Italian inventor called Andre Rossi, quite a controversial character, and I started to support his work, and that's called the ECAT.tech. Now, it's been, quite some time in development. He's made headway with it, but it's still not on the market. Now, let's define a little bit of what we call cold fusion. It's things like taking hydrogen, and there's several ways of doing it, but one of the common ways is with nanonized nickel and combining and getting their nuclei to combine. And of course, that's two, positive charges rebelling. So you need like a catalyst and frequencies to be able to do that. But when you do that, it releases a lot of energy without the radiation. So this is different to hot fusion. It's different to, like a nuclear power station. Cold fusion, you can work out in a garage, You just need a certain amount of equipment, and it's not expensive, to do. So Andre Rossi started to, he dug up a lot of research that people had done and collaborated with some Italian academics, and started to experiment with this, and it made a big wow. This is 2012, and a lot of people started to watch it, and so yes, he didn't get anything, and I was a major investor in that, a major supporter. Then what happened was he catalyzed a whole new beginning of cold fusion. That's the good news of low energy nuclear reaction. And so there's been an official low energy nuclear reaction conference that's being put on internationally. It's very academic. And now we've got about 25 labs around the world. The Japanese government threw $20 million at it about a year ago to their Japanese. The rest of the world is governments are asleep at the wheel, totally asleep at the wheel. They don't support cold fusion at all, because governments go to universities and say, check this out, should we support it? And the academics are going like, we don't know if it works, and don't support it, So 50% of them support it and 50% of them don't, so to speak, roughly. So it's still controversial, but headway has been made a lot with this, right? Particularly with some of the Japanese work that's happening. So that's the theme of, being able to take us to a new paradigm with energy. You can only do so much with solar and wind, as we've discovered, right? Now, there's a place for that, Zoe. We try, but it's still kind of like, basic stuff, right? And some of it, of course, like with wind, it can be quite questionable with how how much cost to produce and how long it lasts. It's a controversial area. But so we're desperate for like a new paradigm in energy production, right? And that's where cold fusion is fitting into that. Now, then what happened? There was an Australian inventor called Malcolm Bendall, and many years ago, he started to dabble with what he calls the Thunderstorm Generator, right? And the Thunderstorm is sort of based on these same principles of things like the golden mean ratio and cold fusion, but it's a little bit different. He is brilliantly recreating. Now, remember at the beginning of our conversation, I talked about these little toroidal structures, right? If you want, in layman's terms, just like think of it as like little magnets, right? But the technical term for that is plasmoids, which there's a bit of a long history to that as well, with some significant people working with it. But again, it wasn't celebrated by academia, right? It was just pushed to the side. So he started to create a device that would generate trillions of plasmoids, which, now remember, getting back to that singular little plasmoid, it's taking energy from the outside and taking it through the 0 point and then pushing it back out. So when you start to generate these trillions of plasmoids, which he does through retrofitting a fossil fuel engine, and it's sort of bolted on to, you get the exhaust, the heat from the exhaust and the cold air coming in. You get this differential happening. Again, it's based on these sort of a ratio of 4:3:2. There's a lot of guess what? There's even Vedic mathematics involved with this, Zoe.
Vedic, wow.
Yeah, and sort of esoteric mathematics, and of course, vortex energy. So, and then that means that when you've got the exhaust coming out of a fossil fuel engine, you're now stripping, you're taking, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, all of these things, and now you're stripping those electrons away, right? And you're eradicating the pollutants. Now, this has been this is not can you prove it? For the last 2 years, we have done demonstrations at conferences, particularly in America. We've done a demo here in Australia up at Byron Bay. So there's been like over a dozen of demonstrations where we just get a generator, like a petrol generator, and retrofit the Thunderstorm generator onto it, and then there'll be a gas analyzer. And I mean, basically, to demonstrate this, you run the generator without the Thunderstorm generator on. You analyze that, and you get a lot of carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide and other pollutants. Then you retrofit the Thunderstorm generator, and basically, it's taking that, like 98% of carbon monoxide has disappeared. So the thunderstorm.tech website has got a lot of test results. It's got a really good explanation of what plasmoids are. It's got archives there, videos, photos of demos. It's been independently validated. That independent cost 35,000 English pounds to do with a professional company called Elemental. So it's emerging, right? And we did a demo in a Dubai at a cement factory. So you know how we sort of talk about, well, we got, like there's still a lot of resources, right, that we're sitting on, like here in Australia, we're sitting on 6,000 years of coal that we could use, right? And it could bring our electricity prices right down, and we could start actually being competitive manufacturing things and I always say we should be the Germany of the Pacific. We should be doing the high-end engineering because we've got brains, but we just don't have the balls sometimes to,
We don't have good management. We just don't have good management with foresight. They only see as far as their term is, and they.
What I'm saying is the Thunderstorm Generator can be fitted onto gas. It needs a fossil fuel, right? So this can clean up the coal and the gas industry, and that we've actually proven it. Right? Now, once you clean something up, there's no argument, right? Because we're digging up things all the time to use, Right? Now, I would still call this an intermediate solution, Zoe, right? In the sense that I think when we can get to things like cold fusion, which is not using any it's using some basic resources like, nickel, which there's a million years of nickel because you just use a small amount. By the way, 1 barrel of nanonized nickel through a cold fusion process is more than a super tanker of oil, right? That's the energy ratio that we're talking about. Now, fossil fuel is pretty good. When you're involved with breakthrough technologies and you're doing these inventions, your competition is fossil fuel. You actually get a lot for your buck. That lump of coal, that holds a lot of energy in there. So you've got to have, even with cold fusion, if you've just got something what's called a COP, coefficient of performance, like this ratio of how much energy in and how much you're going to get out, right? So coal has like about 1 to 10, right? So it's got a lot of oomph there. So if you invent a device, you have to get the COP up to around 10, 11, 12 without, and be clean, to have no radiation and effluent and all of that, So that's what cold fusion will do, and it's sort of getting there, so to speak, But in the meantime, the Thunderstorm Generator, we're selling kits, right? We manufacture them in Thailand, and people can buy these kits. Up on that website, you'll see the TSG, Thunderstorm Generator, and you can fill out their form and get a quote from us. We have sold about 300 of these kits. They've gone out all over the world. So these amateur mechanics are now putting them onto their tractor, putting them onto their lawnmower, and putting them onto their generators, right? And when you run it, now, here's the deal, guys. Yes, it gets rid of the carbon monoxide. By the way, several thousands of people, particularly children, die of carbon monoxide every year. Did you know that? Let alone the effects of other pollutants, carbon monoxide, etc. Right? So you can put this onto the generator, and you can breathe in that room with it running. We've proven it, right? We've started it up in the garage, and you can still breathe the air. Can you believe it? Because it's actually stripping those electrons down and creating more oxygen. Can you believe it? But those plasmoids, when they're fed back, when you loop everything back into a fossil fuel engine or gas turbine, guess what? You're increasing the fuel efficiency by over 50%. So if you're like, we said to the cement factory, they spend about $10,000 US a day on fuel to run their system. And if we put this into their system and now they start to save 50%, or mining gear, anything, with a fossil fuel, and now you're saving, and we've actually done some preliminary testing on we know it's 50, 60%. That one hasn't been independently tested. The emissions has been independently tested. Remember, this is emerging, right? It's just coming out. Obviously we're looking for investors. We're looking for industries. Now, here's the deal, Zoe. This is the frustrating thing, right, about industry and academia and all of this. They are as boring as old farts, I can tell you that. None of these people want to take risks. I'm a risk taker, right? We won't get anywhere unless we start pushing the envelope. When you go to these people and they sort of go, oh, okay, you build it, and then we'll come along and look at it. And we're going like, well, hold on, we're at the stage now where we actually need some serious funding to build a prototype, right, that will prove it up on a larger scale. We've proven at this scale. And, they're all just going like, well, you build it. And I've had this for 20 years, right? Nobody wants to really, there's a lack of imagination, a lack of risk taking, right? And Australia could be the wonderful place to do this, right? Now, we have had some political interest, and again, it's not from the main parties. It's more like, from the guys who are against the vaccines, right? Those heroes who said, no, hang on a minute, this shouldn't be mandated, They're the ones that are open-minded, and so we've got it starting to get a little bit of traction, but we're wanting to take it to the next stage and get it into, like one industry where we can prove it up, and then, people can come and look at it, and those people can be investors, and be linked into this. So that's the stage that we're at. Thunderstorm Generator, the most exciting emerging technology on the planet, right? Done by an Australian inventor. There's now, it's just a grassroots movement, but it's gaining traction, and and again, it's using the whole thing: golden mean ratio, plasmoids, toroidal energy, vortexes, and transmutation, alchemical transmutation. So I rest my case, guys. That's it.
Well, wouldn't that be amazing if we could clean up the coal and gas industry?
I think so, Zoe. I mean,
we could have all these problems of this net zero and all this ridiculousness of actually killing off Western countries.
Well, there's a pushback with all of that now. Now, like 20 years ago, we all got convinced about, the climate change and all this, 20 years ago. But then about 7 years ago, what happens, as you know, everybody just buys into the narrative, right? And academically, you wouldn't get a grant unless you were going to buy into that narrative. We never did. We should have done a conference with the pros and the cons, or those who are for it, or those who are arguing against. They never do that, and we should be doing that. We should have a conference where those who are saying that it doesn't exist and it exists, we should nut it out. But that's not happening, and you only get funding if you're part of the narrative, and then you become a conspiracy theorist, as you know, and then you're a denier. I don't know what we're denying. We're not in any denial. We're just truth seekers, right? And yes, there's a pushback because the cost of living, the price of electricity. If you get energy costs down, it has a remarkable effect on the economy, and it has a remarkable effect on third world countries across the board. If you get those basic energy costs down, which I think we can still do with the use of our natural resources, as long as it's done in a clean way, in which we can do, right? And so that whole narrative can become more balanced, right? At the moment, it's just out of balance, right? The whole net the whole net thing, and then the political. But if we just remove the emotion and just look at emerging technologies and how we can use technology, we've always come back to. Have you noticed if you get out of the emotion and just come back to the technologies, that's what actually moves us forward, is getting these technologies out into our economy, out into the marketplace.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Senator Jared Rennick about this? He's
the
one
guy
of our...
that the Thunderstorm team did a little demo here a couple of weeks ago in Sydney. So that's right. He's great.
A genius. Yeah, he's so good. Yes, I support him as best I can. Yeah. So tell me, what with the cold fusion, what are the uses for the cold fusion thing?
Oh, okay, yeah. Basically, it's just a sexy boiler. The way we generate our electricity is just with a turbine. So what happens is, you just, with gas and coal and everything, you're just heating up water, and it has to be it turns it into steam, and that's what runs a turbine. And that's the turbine is running the generator, and that's what's going out in the power cables, right? So with the cold fusion, you're generating a lot of heat, right? And that's going to heat up the steam, make steam, and run a generator. Right. So it's a sexy boiler.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
And very low cost to run, no radiation, huge energy output. You can scale it. You could just have this in a neighborhood and with a small generator, and you can reduce the size of these grids that we lose a lot. They're very inefficient. We lose a lot of energy when we have to shift it, 500 miles that way. You can scale these. You could have these dotted up all over Africa and third world countries to, start to. You need electricity for education. So yes, those kids need electricity for their computers to educate themselves. Just like we had the privilege of that in our culture, but they don't have it, as you know. So when you get these technologies that can produce electricity in a regional way and scaling, small to large in a modular system. So in answer to your question, that's what it does. It generates heat. And of course, there's a lot of uses for heat. There's 1,000 industries that need industrial heat. But the other trick here is when we get really, really clever with cold fusion, with that, if you're going to just imagine that ball of plasmoid or energy, right, and doing its little transmutation, generating that heat. But if you have these little antennas in there that can pick up what's called the electromagnetic flux, out of that reaction, you could draw electricity from it directly, rather than heating up the water, making the steam, going through a turbine and a generator. The real, ideal technology would to have a direct link into that to create the electricity directly from it. That would be the most efficient way of doing that. Yeah.
Wow. Is this what you presented to ex-Senator Rennick?
I wasn't there, but no, we weren't talking about cold fusion. The Thunderstorm Australian team, and there's some great guys getting involved with this, and they're all doing it, like volunteers. These are the guys that have got the Thunderstorm generator. They've built it onto their generator. They're telling their friends. We did a big demo up in Byron Bay. There was about 100 because of my breakthrough technologies and the conferences I've put on and the inventions that we've been supporting. I have a pretty good database, right? And so we got about 100 people together for that evening in Byron Bay in January of this year, right? That created a whole kind of catalyst for around Australia, with other people starting to put it on and doing demos, and then pushing it towards the politicians now.
Yeah, and so I mean, we've had a lot of rain. I think we're in a 10-year rain cycle here at the moment. Well, in the whole East Coast. So it's actually creating thunderstorms. Do we want thunderstorms?
Oh no, it's called a thunderstorm because it's not nothing. Well, it's because it's replicating what's going on in a thunderstorm, right? Where you get that ball lightning. These plasmoids, another term is sort of these ball lightnings, and you're getting, with a thunderstorm, you're getting that vortex of cold air and hot air, and then it's creating the vortex. So that's why it's called the thunderstorm.
So it's to use the energy that's coming out of it.
Okay, I don't. So if you imagine, have we got a picture of just what it looks like, Jeff, from the website? I don't know.
So is the main? Well, I guess
that's actually a good example there.
Yeah.
So see now that the thunderstorm, when you retrofit it, there's two domes. See that there's one dome there, right?
Yeah.
And it's red and blue because of hot air and cold air. And remember, we're creating these trillions of these little vortexes of energies that is going to take all the emissions and strip them down and transmute them and get rid of carbon monoxide. So, the exhaust is coming in here, the air is coming, the plasmoid or energy is coming in here. That's generated out of water, by the way. It goes, there's a water aspect to this, right? And so that's what's called the Thunderstorm Generator, but you have to retrofit that onto an engine. And next to us there, that's what a thunderstorm looks like, and it's what's happening inside the Thunderstorm Generator.
So it's to help countries get to net zero.
Yes, it will. Without the cost involved. This is a economic cost. These are not expensive to make, and there's no rare earth materials, right? And so yes, it gets rid of the emissions, and it increases the efficiency of that engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of engines, what target market does it have then? Because we don't do a lot of manufacturing or anything left in Australia.
Well, these are easy to manufacture, but we just haven't got it up to that stage yet. At the moment, it's manufactured in Thailand, and the bigger versions are going to be manufactured in India, right?
But that's who needs it. India and China, they're the ones, and America, who's got the greatest emissions, isn't it?
Well, we've all got emissions.
Yeah, but they've got heaps of emissions, haven't they? Like 10 times what Australia's got?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, in answer to your question about the target market, it's a grassroots movement first, right? And to a degree, like that aspect of it, it's kind of like open sourced. That way it doesn't get suppressed, it doesn't get pushed down, and we're just building it up from the ground up, which is quite exciting, The next target would be larger generators, right? The target is not with cars, because that's a little bit more complicated. It can be done, but you'd have to have like a little black box with it to, because the car's accelerating, deaccelerating, so it'd have to be sort of coordinated. I mean, eventually, these big car manufacturers would be wanting to have a thunderstorm generator in their car, right? And also their tractors and also their trucks, right? Absolutely. But those big generators and those big gas generators, they have a constant rev, And that's a little bit more easier for the Thunderstorm Generator to work with at the moment until we have a little black box that can regulate things a bit better. So, but also, like, quite frankly, the mining industry, steel making, and cement, they're very polluting, high energy industries. And we're at the stage now that all we need is one of those to come along on board and support us. We need finance to do this, because that's like a little R&D pilot project which will scale it up, you know. And we just need one of those industries to wake up and smell the coffee and start taking this seriously.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I thought it was really interesting when you said that it uses Vedic mathematics. How does that work?
Because that's the Vajra. You know, in Indian, we've got the Vajra that they would, you know, the two spirals, and they hold it. And yeah. Well, the Thunderstorm Generator looks like the Vajra. It's got these two domes, right?
Yeah.
And it's connected at the between the two domes, and you see the energy's coming in this way and going out this way, and the vortex and the plasmoids are all created in that. So yes, and you have to get the right materials, but it's basic materials like steel and so forth, and then the right proportions, because there's a dome within a dome within a dome. Zoe, it's and that's creating the clockwise and anti-clockwise. It's still based just on yin and yang, right? And getting that implosion happening and creating the trillions of plasmoids, you know, which mixes with the exhaust.
Yeah, right. So when Jeff was showing the photos of the people lying in the bed, was that fractal water?
That's the Theraphi device.
All right. How does that working? Is that moving the molecules in the body, or?
No, it's generating the longitudinal pump waves that I talked about. And every chemical reaction in your body is based on longitudinal scalar waves forms. So you're lying between that polarity of yin and yang, right? Remember, there's two plasmachoids. One's going clockwise, spinning a plasmic vortex, and anti-clockwise, and they collide. Those waveforms are adding and multiplying right down using the golden mean ratio, right down to the 0 point. And out of those, in a way, it's creating plasmoids as well, right? And you're bathed in that. So that's recharging every cell in your body, right down to the DNA, right? So that's, used for pain relief. And there's over 25 clinics around the world now. Up on that website, there's some locations there.
Any in Australia?
Up in Lismore.
I can't read that. That's Lismore.
Yeah, and that's one over at Perth.
Oh, I want to give that a go. Yeah, well, really, I love that guardian of nature, that statement, and the divine proportions of nature, and
because that's what it's all. That's what got me involved with all of that, was that philosophical aspect, which we all want to be. You know, everybody. You know, just recycling your plastics and your glass. Your guardian of nature. Everybody wants to be part of it. I just took it, further.
Yeah. What recycling is important. I mean, we could make good soil out of that and grow food again, and just from recycling, getting your food, getting your compost together, out all the food grows out of the compost. Out comes the tomato plants and the parsley and I don't know why people don't do it. Some don't do it anyway. And with the fractal water, is it affected at all by chlorine and fluoride?
No, it's not affected by that. You can still just run ordinary water through it, which a lot of people will do. With, you know, it's mainly agricultural use that's designed for. I mean, some people do put it into their water line for their house, but you'd have to filter the water first and then put it into your water line. It just means that then the water coming out of the tap and in the shower, it's all really vibrant water.
Yeah.
But it's mainly used in agriculture for growing crops and hydroponics.
If it's good for crops, then it must be good for people.
Hey,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Step in
well,
there.
Drinking the water recharges the water.
I'm going to step in there. Hey, I've actually got that, or two of those units. I've got one from the street that comes into the house. And I got another one, the larger one, the agricultural one. I got that for the swimming pool. So, yeah, it actually puts that vortex water and it comes into the house. And so your showers and your clothing, you can feel the softness in the water. I mean, Brisbane's got hard. It's ideally suited for making hydrogen bombs. So most people do.
When you get that silky feeling, Jeffrey, you know that the water is more coherent and it's been vibrationally charged up. Yeah.
Yeah. So most people find when they come here, they can't lather up because of the hard water of Brisbane. But no, you can do that now with this vortex in water. I also have to say there's another product from down where Zoe is, and the guy makes a green Aussie green, a green Aussie, and it's a really natural product. It actually has a ratio of like 100 to 1, and you can use it for dishwashing, laundry, as a personal soap, hand soap. And your showers screens don't even get filthy, but it's just an alkaline neutralizer, and it foams up. Aussie green. It come in 4 litres and it lasts about 12 months. Really fantastic product.
There's a lot of really good products on the market now. You know, eco products, water, water recharging, products. That's very supportive of regenerative agriculture as well.
Yeah.
And water's so important.
They use that vortex thing over there in West Australia in the wheat fields.
Yeah.
Like,
we had another project called you could find this on the website, Organic Biotech, one word, .solutions, Organic Biotech .solutions. During the COVID years, there was a brilliant Australian biochemist, Leyland Minter, that I worked with. So we had a bit of spare time during those 3 years of COVID when you couldn't travel, I couldn't travel, blah, blah, blah. And we seriously looked into developing some organic products that for regenerative agriculture and hydroponics. And I also had a project called Bloom the Desert. So Bloom the Desert, we were using the imploder, the fractal water device, where we're using things like biochar, microbes that would help to break down the desert sand to reduce the high pH that it has.
Website again, Organic what? Biotech.
Yeah, Organic Biotech, all one word.
Yeah.
.solutions.
Oh, .solutions.
And what was unique about these products is we had a system of extracting the prana and the life force and the macro and the macro and micro minerals out of seawater. And so the thing about our soil, Zoe, is, as you know, it's really demineralized.
Yeah.
And when you know how to do this with seawater, and it's called ORMUS, ORMUS, and that's a bit of a cottage industry around the world where people dabble in this. It's based on what's called orbitally rearranged molecular elements, or ORMUS, and you sort of extract this out of spring water or extract it out of seawater. So we'd make our ORMUS, which is this just think of it as capturing the life force out of the sea, as well as on a tangible level, the macro and the micro minerals, the magnesium and all the trace minerals and copper and you name it. And that would be the basis of making these products. So we had a natural insecticide using, Australian, essences, and we had, glyphosate is a problem, as you know, but it's the thing about glyphosate is it does the job really, really well, and it's hard to find an organic alternative. But we did create. Oh, what's that? I don't know who's. That's another website. That's not us, Jeffrey.
No, it's people who ask questions relating to questions.
If you could go back to the organic biotech, there was the products. There was about 5 products there, and one of them. Let's have a look here. There's Gotcha, right, which is the sort of insecticide, the fungicide, Sea Vigor, On Guard, right? But this Gotcha was a weed control, and it was a bit of an alternative to glyphosate. It can't do everything that glyphosate does, right? But it was an alternative. It would work on some crops, right? Now, just so you know, that's an R&D project. None of these products are available, just so you know. And we've been looking for some investors to take this up to a scale where we can manufacture it, but it would take a couple of million because you got to get equipment in. But boy, we did a lot of the R&D in those years. We've tested it, fine-tuned it. And the point is, regenerative agriculture really needs some good products to help it. And these products they're quite unique. They're different to other things on the market, particularly because of the use of the ORMUS, the extraction out of seawater, and some of the other dynamics there. It was a pleasure working with Leyland Minter. When you go into places like Bunnings in Australia and you're looking for an organic garden product, he invented about half of them on the shelf and has sold them in the past. He's retired now, but he's absolutely brilliant to work with. So that was another breakthrough technologies, but it hasn't entered into the marketplace, unfortunately.
Gee, we need some innovative politicians, don't we? And what about the CSIRO? Are they interested when you speak with them about
we
these?
didn't have you go to them when you have funds to pay them to test something. We don't have, that, and they're up to their eyeballs with their own project. We don't even bother going to those people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're good at what they do, but they're there for industry will go along to them and say, oh, look, we want you to test this and test, and they go, oh, fine, yeah, that will cost you $200,000.
Just to get their label on it when there could be other people who can test just as effectively.
Well, they're good at what they do, and they're good people, but yeah, it's a different dynamic. This is one of the things about breakthrough technologies. Everything is emerging and thinking outside of the envelope. All of the, the kind of esoteric, I call it esoteric science, which I personally think is what's going to take us to the next paradigm, not just boring old reductionist scientific methodologies. We have to think a little bit more about the, golden mean ratio, vortexes, frequencies, and when you go to these places, they don't really understand that, so you're only dealing with a small amount of people that will take a risk of these kind of things. There's not many of those people around, I can tell you that.
No, it's all about America, isn't it? America's the place for investments.
Yeah, Americans are good. Yeah. but then you need a lot of money to just get around to go to all the conferences, present, and it's a tricky situation. Just anybody's would agree with me. When you've got a new invention, getting those little benchmarks done is a real challenge. The good thing about Australia and a lot of other countries, they do have a tax rebate for R&D, and Australia has done a good job with that. It's like 40-50%. So that's something that people have been using very efficiently for R&D projects. England has it. America has it to a degree. That helps. But
what about
getting
New Zealand? What about New Zealand? What about New Zealand?
Yeah, they have a tax rebate for R&D projects. Yeah, they're pretty good. They're aligned, I think, with the Australian system with that. Yeah.
All right. And so when you regenerated the desert, you were using salt water. Where was the desert?
Okay, so we in Dubai.
Oh, Dubai.
Yeah, outside of Dubai. Yeah, there was a trial farm, a desert farm that I had access to.
I saw that. Yeah.
So we would get the seawater and then make the ORMUS out of it, which is a very simple application, right? It only takes a couple of days. I had the fractal water device there. We call it the imploder. We had biochar, right, which is sort of like creating like a carbon hotel for the microbes to start to breed in. Biochar is a great way. Regenerative agriculture uses biochar a lot. It's quite easy to make, and they're starting to put biochar back into their, into their soil, and we used microbes that were tailor-made for that situation. And we brought, we had the desert sand tested before we started, and it was something like 13. It was like over the top. It was something. Was it like 11.8 pH? Really alkaline. And we brought it down to 8.2. Now, I used to have a website called bloomthedesert.com, and it's disappeared because my website designer has gone away somewhere. And I will get it back onto Breakthrough Technologies site, which is also a site I'm updating. But we used to have all of those test results up there on black and white, where we tested it before, high pH, and then we did these the whole thing was low-tech technologies, right, to reduce the desert sand from the pH and to transmute some of these elements into usable things. And it was a great success. And I always say I grew carrots in the desert. We grew cabbages and carrots and all sorts of things.
Wow.
It took a couple of years. I self-funded this. I would go over there and stay and do something and then come back and grow things, and went over for about 2 years actually. But we got really good results.
To Dubai. You're in Dubai doing this.
Yeah.
You actually were there in that terrible heat.
Yeah, I don't mind the heat. I was out digging ditches, and the Indian guys that I helped, I got paid some labor guys. They would give up, and I was still out there digging ditches because we dig ditches for the biochar and lay it down, and then I'd sprinkle the microbes. So the first time we did this, we didn't use any compost or any organic fertilizer. We kept that out of the solution, so that we could just prove by using these couple of things that we could get the the pH down, and we actually grew things in that environment pretty well. And then the next time we used some small amount of fertilizer. The whole point of this exercise was to demonstrate that you can use a small amount. Indian farmers get into debt a lot with, not only by having to buy the seeds and GMO and all that crap, but, they get into debt with their fertilizer costs. So if you have technologies that can go in first, and then, if you reduce your fertilizer cost by 50%, that means a lot to any farmer,
Yeah.
And so that was part of the solution of Bloom the Desert.
And especially now, they're saying there's a fertilizer shortage due to the war in the Ukraine.
Yeah. I think Organic Biotech Solutions had some solutions to that as well, with some of our products. We were starting to use, even just getting the phosphate, we're starting to use a rock that was available in Australia that we crushed up, and we combined that with the minerals, which you got your magnesium from, and we fought that one through.
Wow.
We had some good natural solutions, organic solutions for fertilizer. It's up there. It's the Sea Vigor was the easy one. The Vigor Grow, that was our fertilizer, Vigor Grow. On that website, if you can go into each of those products and read about it. There's a little video there. Just remember, they're not available, and we're looking for investing to take this to the next stage. We want to build a little factory to produce it, or at least just get a pilot scheme done.
So have you applied to the Gates Foundation? I mean, they're wanting to save the planet, aren't they?
Yeah.
No?
No, I haven't applied to anybody.
Why not?
Oh, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. They get 1,001 people every day.
Oh.
Well, guys, good catching up with you. Yeah, thanks for that. It's nice to be able to just kind of, I don't often get a chance to talk about all of them. And thank you very much. It's been.
Well, thank you. It's so informative, and I really look forward to sharing this with everyone I know. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in it. So thank you very much, Roger.
Yeah.
I'll get you back again.
Good hanging out with you, Zoe.
Thank you.
And thanks, Jeffrey. Well done with your show, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Love you.
Okay. Bye for now.
Ciao. So, listen, next week, I have to send you the information about next week, and I don't have it written here, but it's Kaz Kalima.
Are we online? Are we live?
Yeah, we are. We haven't.
Don't know anything about next week.